Hello, welcome everybody to our last set of notes before we take our unit test and finish up this section. So this is operations with integers. This would be, if you are working with me right now, that means you have already finished multiplying and dividing, and you should now be about 70% finished with your Edgenuity for the 9 weeks. So if you aren't there, go back before, but if you are there, let's take these notes. So operations with integers, we want to put everything we've learned together. So we've looked at each operation individually, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. Here we want to put it all together to be able to use them all at the same time to solve problems. Now, looking at what we need to write down first is this. This is a key that we need to do well on Edgenuity and on some of these tougher problems. We need to rewrite to simplify. Okay, so I would have that written down and then write these examples down as well. And what a lot of times they're going to ask you is to understand, is it positive or negative? And so a lot of the questions will say, select all of the ones that are telling you which one's positive, or select all of the answers that will be negative. And we need to understand whether it's going to be positive or negative. Now, in this first example, once you've got that written down, some students who are being less successful are trying to jump right from this and say, it looks like there's a lot of negatives, the answer's probably negative. And that's not what we need to do. We need to rewrite to simplify. Even me as a math teacher, I need to actually rewrite this and try and solve this to know whether the answer is going to be positive or negative. So if you don't have anything written with pencil or paper, you're at a disadvantage for sure. So when we talked about subtraction, this would be read as -3 minus -8. And so you needed to have memorized the rule for that subtraction was whenever you see this, minus a negative, you needed to rewrite it to simplify it as just plus. Minus a negative, they're just trying to confuse you, that is really just plus. And so on a piece of paper, I would actually write out -3 plus 8. Because now, if you remember the adding rule said, well, whoever wins the game between the negatives or positives, that's who gets the answer. So since there were 3 negatives and 8 positives, the positives win, and the answer is positive 5. So you would select this one. You know that this is going to turn out to be positive because there are more positives than negatives after you rewrite it. But if you don't go from here to here, it's very, very difficult to see the answer from step 1. So always, always, when things get longer than 2 numbers and they're simple, write stuff out to simplify it. Good. The next example is a little bit more of like your please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, your order of operations or PEMDAS. So here there's again more things going on, and so we need to do them one step at a time, and I'm not going to try and do this all in my head in one step because that would just be reckless. I need to take my time and do this in the correct order one step at a time. So I read 5 minus 3 times 2 plus -4. And so there's a lot going on here, but if I remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, I remember that multiplication should come first. So I should not do 5 minus 3 first. I should do 3 times 2 first. And so again, I can't do this in my head and I can't do it without writing it out. So I need to take what's going to be left here. So this 5 minus, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to bring it over here and rewrite it. 5 minus. What I am going to do is the 3 times 2 because I know that comes first. And 3 times 2 gives me 6. And then again, I'm not going to use any of this stuff yet, so I'm going to rewrite it as well. Plus -4. Good. And so that's what I mean by we need to rewrite to simplify. Because if you don't know what to do first and you don't rewrite it on a piece of paper, you're going to be at a very big disadvantage because you might do 3 times 2 is 6, but then you're thinking, what do I do with the 6 now? Do I do 6 in the 4 or do I do 6 in the 5? Write it out so you can see it better. Good. And so now, one common misconception is, okay, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So addition comes first and then subtraction. And that's actually not true. Addition and subtraction are equals. They're just inverse of each other. So addition and subtraction are the same importance. So we need to go just left to right now. So the first thing I should do is 5 minus 6. So again, I'm going to rewrite this out again. So 5 minus 6, well, 5 minus 5 would be 0. So 5 minus 6 is 1 lower than that, negative 1. And then I'm going to rewrite what I didn't use. I didn't use this yet, so I'm going to rewrite it, plus negative 4. And so my final question, now that I can do this without rewriting it, negative 1 plus negative 4 is negative 5, because they're both negative. Good. And so I know that this one will be negative, whereas that one was positive. So make sure that you take the time to rewrite so that you can simplify it for yourself, because if I just looked right here and said, it looks positive, that would not be an educated guess. That's just a guess. Okay, so let's keep working through here about some of the more difficult problems. So this is what we just went over, order of operations. So order of operations, if you need to copy this down, please do. Some of you have already gotten this, but this is stuff that you've seen in 5th grade and 6th grade, that you do your parentheses first, then you do your exponents, then multiply, divide, then add and subtract. So again, it doesn't mean that multiplication is more important than division, but you do your multiplication and division third, and you do addition and subtraction fourth. So maybe those numbers might be beneficial for you to write down, because you can see, looking at these examples, we've really stepped up our game with the difficulty of the problems that you've seen. So you've seen these things in elementary school, but you have not seen questions that are this difficult. So we're really going to step up our difficulty, and that means that you really, really, really need to use a pencil. If I tried to do this without a pencil and paper, I would not get it right, most likely. So you need to use that paper. So let's go through here. So I'm going to do this first example, and I'm going to use this order of operations. So parentheses comes first, so I'm going to look for parentheses. Now this is a parentheses right here, but there's only one number in it. There's only a 5. So really this is 3 times 5. This wouldn't really qualify as parentheses. This would qualify as multiplication down here. So I'm going to save that for later. But this parentheses right here I need to do first. So when I do that first, I'm going to do this and only this, and everything else I'm going to copy down. So we can't be lazy here and just write down 5. We have to copy everything down. So I'm going to write 3 minus, and then here 4 plus 1 is 5. So the parentheses go away now because I've done everything in the parentheses. So now I have 3 minus 5, and I'm going to keep copying everything down. Minus 4 squared, or to the second power, plus 3 times 5. So we should have this formation where it was this long, and we're just making it a little bit shorter. Okay, so parentheses, check. Exponents. I do see an exponent. Exponents are right here. It's those little numbers that are above like that. And so just a refresher, 4 squared, I'm going to write it somewhere else so we're not in our own way here. I'll do a different color. So this is just a little note for yourself. Remember, 4 squared, the little exponent just tells you how many times you're multiplying by itself. So 4 squared is 4 times 4. 3 squared is equal to 3 times 3. And so 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. Okay? Really important that you understand that. A lot of people think, oh, 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 2 is not the same as 4 squared. So remember, 4 squared is 4 times 4, that's 16. Okay, and so that's important to remember. So again, same thing. I'm going to copy down everything that I haven't used. I'm going to copy down, and the only thing that's going to change is I'm going to, instead of writing 4 squared, I'm going to write 16 because it's the same. Good. So I'm going to write 3 minus 5 minus 16 plus 3 times 5. So everything stays the same except for the one thing I changed. Good. So exponents, check. Now I'm going to look for multiplication and division at the same time. So for multiplication and division, I see right here some multiplication, but I don't see any division anywhere. So let's do that. 3 times 5 gives me 15. So now I'm going to write down 3 minus 5 minus 16 plus 15. So I'm just simplifying one thing at a time here. And then lastly now, so multiplication and division, check. Lastly, I'm going to do any addition and subtraction. So the only thing that you should see left is addition, subtraction. Good. Subtraction, subtraction, addition. So I've done it correctly. That's the only thing that's left. And so now I need to do all of these things, but I'm not going to do addition first. Just because I listed it first doesn't mean it comes first. Addition and subtraction are equally important, so you need to go from left to right. So here I'm going to start with 3 minus 5. 3 take away 5 has to be negative, and so I'm going to get negative 2 minus 16 plus 15. Okay. Negative 2 minus 16, well, we're starting negative and we're getting even lower. So a negative 2 minus 16 would be negative 18. If I do that next, and then I'm going to bring down the plus 15. And then here my adding rules say, well, if you have one negative versus the positives, I say, well, who won and by how many? So it looks like the negatives scored more points, but not by many. The positives had pretty close. So this one would be negative 3 as my final answer. Very nice. Okay, so this right here, you can see I call it like, looks like a V. This is what your work should look like on your paper. It should be like a funnel or a V. It should start with this big long problem that Edgenuity asks you, and it should gradually on your paper get smaller and smaller as you do more steps. So this is beautiful work that I'm looking for that you should have on your paper if you're looking to get these questions correct. Okay, good. So there is one new piece for you that you probably have not seen before, and that's using this order of operations with fractions. Okay, so I did put this little asterisk here for something new that you may not have seen before. So make a note for yourself and have it written down that for fractions, you need to do the top, then the bottom, then divide. So I'm going to think of this as like separate things. So I'm going to think of it as you should do everything in the top as one problem. You should do everything in the bottom as a second problem. And then we talked last time that this big long fraction bar, it just means divide. So it means everything up here is divided by everything down there. And so I'm just going to do them separately. And so the first thing I'm going to do is in the top. And I think I might be able to do this in my head in one step. So up here in red, I'm going to do the top first. So I'm going to follow order of operations just for what's in red, ignoring everything else. So I'm going to do parentheses first. So 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. Check. Done. Now the only thing that's left is 3 parentheses 1. And so 3 parentheses 1, that's just 3 times 1. And so 3 times 1 is 3. So I'm going to rewrite this as 3. I'm going to keep the fraction bar. And then now in green, I'm going to do everything that's in the bottom. So I did the top. Now I'm going to do the bottom. So now I do exponents first. So remember, 3 squared, that's 3 times 3, which is 9. Again, be careful, that's not 6. We're not saying this is 3 times 2. This is 3 to the second power, which is 3 times 3. So this is 9, and then 9 plus 1 is 10. And so now the answer is 3/10. And so now you could divide if it went into it evenly, but 3/10 looks like a good answer to me. So you could do 3 divided by 10, but this is actually a final answer here because it doesn't simplify at all. Okay, so you would do the top first, then the bottom, and then if you need to, you can divide afterwards. And so that is it. That's all you need to be successful in this section. So fractions will maybe try and intimidate you a little bit, but it's the same thing. Follow your order of operations, but just do the top first, all in one step, then do the bottom next, and then there might be a division problem here. So instead of 3 divided by 10, it might be 10 divided by 5. And 10 divided by 5 would go evenly. It would be nice, and it would work out. So good luck on this section. If you have questions, let us know.